I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this meeting is respectfully held on the traditional territory of the Sitka First Nation, on whose land we live, work, and play. We have the agenda circulated. Would somebody like to move adoption? Seconder? All in favor? That's carried. So we'll move on to taxation.
So I'll start off, just give it a little introduction here. So we provided you with a package that's a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Myself in. So we've prepared this in a little bit of a different fashion than we've done in the past. We've tried to simplify it as much as we possibly could, and kind of providing that high level summary that I think would be more beneficial for council. There is some details that are kind of given throughout the document that'll give you a little bit more information on some of the totals that are in place. But we thought that this would be a little bit easier for council to be able to go over. The following documents, and Margaret will go over this in a little more detail. We've added some notes that kind of give some explanation on increases, decreases, why exactly we're doing those types of things. But again, trying to condense this down to make this a little bit easier for everybody to be able to understand. Yeah, so with that, I'll turn it over to Margaret, and she'll go over a little bit of the explanation on where we're at and where we're proposing to go with this. Now we're talking about just the general budget at this point. We're not talking about the water and sewer. So this is just about general taxation. Over to Margaret.
Oh, yep. Sorry, I was going for.
So it's actually both, because talking about the general taxation and what we're going to set for taxation affects the general operating fund. So to be able to determine what that's going to be, we had to go through the exercise of actually doing the budget for the whole of general fund. So it needs to be presented together to have a good idea of what we would require for the taxation. So starting out, we were about $580,000 at a taxation loss from our levy that we normally collect because of the Canfor mill closure allowance. So once I got the new non-market change report, there were some gains in other classifications of taxation. So the loss in the end for the major industry class was around 529,000 because there were gains on other businesses within the class. And overall, with new construction, the loss that we were facing was about 580 or 487,944. So from that, I've gone on to say, well, this is the levy that would be based on our previous levy with that loss. So then we've backwards built the budget to come up with what we would require to run the budget that's presented to you. So this budget is based on the 2025 levy plus new construction, taking into account the loss. It uses the previous mill rate for 2025 going forwards into 2026 for the remaining properties within the class 4, so that they are being taxed at the same level they were. Otherwise, if we took into account the loss and worked it backwards, they're going to pay less. So we kept it at the same rate that was for 2025 going forward. I've also proposed a increase to the class 2 utility rate. So within the utility class, these are properties such as land and improvements for railway transportation, pipelines, electricity generation, transmission, and telecommunications. So TELUS, Hydro, CN. We can have up to a 2.5 times the business rate collection in the utility class. So I've maximized that to gain us an additional about 1% of taxation to add back to offset that loss. The other changes, we've added a 2.1% CPI, and the 2.1 CPI comes to about 122,000, which is just over, I guess half of what our loss would have been without it. So that brings us up to about 5,975,98 for the levy that we would like to collect in 2026. This overall levy is down 304,580 from the previous year, even built into this budget. So the documents that are following the tax distribution break down how we are covering the 304,580. So throughout the budget, we've done some increases, some decreases, and we've come to a balanced budget at the 2.1 with the 304,580 decrease in taxation levy.
Can we take a pause there just for a second and just sticking to this sheet here that Margaret just walked through? I think it's really, in my mind, important to look, even though we're talking about, having to have that 2.1 in there, we're talking about a 7.3% tax decrease from last year's total levy. So if this is what we pass, it would be a 7.3% decrease. So I think that's an important piece to convey to residents in Valley. No, but
Residential, that's the biggest class.
utilities.
Utilities. Class 4 is the major industry. Yeah.
It's on the next page.
Yeah.
Class 5 is our light industry, Class 6 business, Class 8 recreation, and Class 9 farm. So I've included a bit of information just so you can see what the actual assessment values are in 2025 and 2026. So you can see the change in assessment, because what I've given you on this page where I've explained the tax levy distribution is just taxation itself. It doesn't include the actual assessments per the classes. So you have the non-market change roll comparison report, which tells you how I came to the non-market change total, and what the assessments were in 2025 and 26, and the difference between them and the percentage change on the final column.
Perfect. Let's just pause again there and just make sure everybody kept up on, anybody having, no, sometimes it's easy to
Yeah,
go too
yeah.
fast.
Yeah, we've had a chance to go over this a few times, so.
Everybody's good? Okay.
So I've also included the circular, which lets you know that we can actually do 2.5 times the applicable rate to Class 6 property for times the business rate.
And honestly, that should be a maximum the whole time.
It should be,
Yeah.
yes. So we will have gains of $60,000 plus going forward. So that helps us in consecutive years. Of course, the 2.1% is only for this year. So to pick up on our levy, we will have to continue as we go forward. Now, also with this budget, we have done cuts, we've done moving, so we are at a point where this is the best we can do for this year. So if we were to go into 2027 and we were to have another loss, such as Canfor going from Class 4 to Class 6, we've got another $250,000 that we will need to cover, and then that will be another conversation we'll have to have as to how we cover that loss. Right now, we're not using the industrial reserve, so we currently have about 1.5 million in the reserve. This budget is transferring the full amount, once again, of the 138,255. It's built into this budget to the industrial reserve, so that will continue to increase it. And just as perspective to keep in mind, Class 4 had a loss of 529,000 in this one closure allowance. So that reserve would only keep us stable for 3 years at that kind of loss. So once we get into another $250,000, we're looking at using the industrial reserve probably for some, and keeping in mind that we still have additional mills within that class that could face similar circumstances. So we've tried to minimize use of the industrial reserve, to leave it, because we do know that there will be changes on the Canfor property in the future. So. Are there any questions on the taxation bit itself?
I'm just on that last point. What happens if there's a positive on the Canfor site.
So
It
one of,
depends.
With what
Yeah.
we're, and so where I'm going with that is when we set up this reserve in 2014, we didn't decide at that time that it was going to be for A, B, or C shutting down. We just thought it was when somebody shuts down that we were going to use that reserve. So we've been pre-taxing heavy industry on whatever it is, an extra 1.5%, whatever the number was, for the day that Canfor or L&M or Brink shuts down. And so I'm glad that we're still, because we still have 2.5 properties that are paying tax, and we're going to take the 138. We need to decide as a group when we're going to use that. It shouldn't be that when L&M and Brink shut down, or if they don't, that we never use that money. We should be thinking about using it now. Because that's what we thought back then. We didn't think it was going to be, whatever the impact, but I just think we need to think about using that now instead
So
of later.
with the budget I've put together here, if you were to actually use some of that instead,
Mhm.
then what you would have to change it off with is the 2.1% increase. So then you would take the 122 out of the reserve and have a 0% tax increase, and then you're not gaining. So compounding over the years, we get to 2027, we had the 2.1. If we do another 2, you're gaining that taxation to cover that loss into perpetuity. But
Yes.
if we take out of the reserve, we're sitting stagnant and using that for to cover off a tax increase, a minor tax increase of CPI. The other thing it does too is if we were to use some of it now, we actually now have a surplus in our budget. And what are we spending that money on? Because we've made it 0 with the 2.1. So there are only certain places we can use that at this point.
Go to
I-
Chair Waddell, then we'll go to Council Martins.
I think we have one other thing that we have to take into consideration is that as much as Canfor is in this process, or there will be something that will be going out there, the likelihood that it's going to go back at the same taxation rate is very low. So if we find a way that we can hold on to this reserve on the interim now, and perhaps we make a change to the reserve so that there's a cap level that we get up to and we hold it at that amount, or that we provide some opportunities for that fund to be used in some other ways. But at least this way we can have that ability to stretch that out as long as possible and maybe be able to have it so then next year, instead of having a 3%, we can go back to the 2.1 or whatever. We can utilize a smaller portion of that over an extended period of time. Because this change that we're going through right now is not going to be short in duration. If we had something that was to start out at the Canfor site, it'd be years before we actually saw the benefits that are going to be associated with it. So we're just trying to find some ways in order to take that reserve and stretch it out as far as possible.
And the reserve bylaw was written in a way that it is to be used for an eventual shutdown or to cover that off. But it's also written that if it wasn't necessary and it wasn't needed, it could still go back in to help the municipality fund other projects that we may not have funding for. We may not have RBA, and maybe we're okay in 5 years from now, and industry's okay, but we have that reserve to utilize for other purposes, and it was written that way. So, and I believe that there was an understanding from everybody about those reserves.
I think,
Go back to you afterwards.
I have a little trouble with that too. I'm kind of agreeing with Councillor Frankel there, and the fact that I know that some of the business community feels like when we came up with the statement saying that we have this reserve that's been put aside, so then, okay, we've actually been paying more than we should have. We've been overtaxed to put this reserve away for that rainy day fund.
How do you respond to that?
Only the mills.
Only the mills, yeah. But I have, you hear that,
Yeah.
and for this rainy day fund, let's call it, and it rained. So I have a really hard time not using some of it if it was put away for. I certainly don't want to deplete it and use it all, but the way things are right now in our town and the people are struggling and all that kind of stuff. I think the way we approached it, we have this big loss, but we have a fund that we can help balance that with. And then for us not to use it now, then why did we have that there?
That was gonna be my supplemental. Is,
We'll go there and then I want to get a word in at some time too.
yes, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Sometimes.
I agree, and where I was going with it was not to use the whole amount. But is there something that we're not doing? And it sounds like we're not doing something from last year, whatever that be. I don't know if it's Nelson SCADA equipment. I don't have a clue what. But why aren't we using $50,000? I'm not looking to use all of it to offset, but Ernest is right. We set that aside and we came out in January and said we had a reserve fund to help. And if we go to the people and say we're not using it, you know, maybe through prudent planning for other reasons, like, you know, you're doing a good job with the team on the budget. I just, you know, I like the 2.1, but I think we should use a little bit of that money somewhere along the line.
So
That's something.
we will have to use it come 2027, because if the Canfor site, and they are not going to keep their equipment on there forever, I'm pretty sure, it will go down to class 6 at some time. And as I said, this was all the cuts we could find to balance it out. So there's really no other place to find money in 2027. So we will be using that reserve should we have any further downturn of any industry. And again, that's not going to last very long at $250,000.
I'm just
Or
going to say,
more.
okay, I'm going to come with my piece now and I'm going to speak the opposite way to you two, just in that we haven't seen, I don't think, the last shoe drop yet. I think a good time to review this would be when the Chaco Lumber is operating at 2 shifts. I think if we've got a stable mill operating at 2 shifts, then we can review should this be gone now, or if we need the money next year. You see that in Mackenzie, where they cut taxes too much right away, and then they had to do, you know, multiple, you know, in the 15 range, right? 15 to 18, and for a couple of years to get back. And that is a terrible thing to bring to the taxpayer. So I think if you cut too much right away, you do run a problem there. It's great to have this here. It will be used as a cushion. It's when is the most appropriate time to use it as a cushion. Go ahead.
So another thing just to consider is that we have a benefit right now that, again, may not be here for the long term, is that we have the Resource Benefit Alliance that's allowing us to continue with some capital projects that we wouldn't otherwise. We've taken things like the paving program this year, and we've really reduced that for this year. Part of the reason for that is that, again, we could use RBA money next year, and instead of putting it in at the $500,000 that we usually do, we may be able to put it back in as $1 million and actually get some benefits out of that economy of scale and activities like that. So some of the things like Margaret had indicated, we're putting a pause on, or we're putting some ways in order to kind of clamp down on these things for this year. And then we're going to do a more fulsome evaluation on things that we can look at for next year. And it's likely that we may need to start to utilize that fund at that time. So then we will actually be dipping into that slowly in order for us to be able to get those operating and those capital projects back online, and being able to again stretch that reserve out as far as possible.
So the one thing that I did mention in the note here is that we are reducing the capital we normally do out of taxation. So in the past, before RBA, we didn't have a lot of reserves and we relied heavily on grants to do projects. So there was only so much we could do. So taxation was covering roughly $500,000 of capital projects annually. So now that we have RBA and that can fund a lot of our projects, we can reduce the amount of capital we're taking out of taxation, which is how we're balancing this out right now, because we do have that funding right now. And we didn't know we were going to have that funding. So It came, it's great we have it, but it does allow us to minimize the taxation because of the allotment we were doing out of capital.
Savandolo.
Margaret, are we anticipating to get the same level of grants dollar wise that we were looking at? To me, like we're anticipating just under $1,000 reduction of what we received last year.
It really depends on what our projects are for grants. So we have unconditional grants, which are things like our small communities grants, which are given to us just for operations. And then we have gas tax funding, which has to go into a reserve and be used for specific projects. And then there are all our other little grants. So that is operational grants that we apply for on an annual basis. They're project specific. So depending when a stream comes up and if it comes up, and they're getting less and less. And I think part of that is because we do have the RBA funding. So those other grants aren't coming available that we have to compete for to try to do our projects. We now have set RBA funding to do our projects. So we don't have to chase grants for those type of things. So the other grants are down a bit, but there's the reserves like gas tax and the RBA and growing communities that they've given us and capital and capital planning grants that the province and the federal government have provided us over.
What I'm kind of getting at is that because we do so well in getting grant funding, it helps take pressure off of the regular taxation budget.
That is correct. And we are very aggressive with
Yeah,
grants
yeah.
and that is a great thing for the municipality and for the taxpayers because it does keep us balanced out. So we don't run into, it is an issue, but it's not one that's going to crash our operations.
Thank you.
Cautious. We're all aware.
Cuts are coming tomorrow in the budget. And so I think granting programs across British Columbia will be reduced quite significantly. So we've done well. And maybe we're planning well as well. So I don't think we're gonna see that in this year or 2027. Maybe federally, maybe we'll do something federally. Just to, one thing I don't see, Margaret, and please, and not that I have everyone for 25 years, but I go back probably 14 or 15 of these binders in my office. Well, I'm not liking seeing this. I like every department's budget in front of me. I want to know that Nelson has X amount for equipment. We've never argued it, but I like seeing that in front of me. Just so I know that we're keeping up and nothing's missing. So I appreciate that this may be easier for most. For me, I love a binder with everybody's operational. And I know that's probably more work for Margaret and her team, but I really like seeing a binder, but that's just me.
I'm not, just kind of reiterating already, like, you know, when you gave the analogy that it started to, it's rained, I think I see it more as this, we're in the sprinkling stage. I think next year is the downfall. So I was just going to say, I think it's good to be really conservative this year. So that's all I was going to.
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply for a second that we spend it all. I'm just thinking, just in my head, that maybe at minimum, we don't contribute to that fund this year, at least that would show that we're using some of that funding that normally would go into that fund. We're using that to keep our taxes reasonable. If, you know, I don't know if that's an amount big enough to make a difference, but at least you can justify it for the people that are, you know, I'm trying to think as the taxpayers, and we all know we're spending their money, and and they're going up to pay their taxes and they're having a tough time. And if we can keep it where we want it and we use some of that fund, or if we don't use the fund, maybe don't contribute to it and attribute that to something, or I don't know. That might be looking at it the wrong way, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, so we did consider not adding that in there for this year. But with looking at the way that our operation and our capital is currently, we thought that it was still possible for us to contribute to that at this time. The other part of it is that when you actually take a look at what it will be for property taxes for residential properties, they're going to stay about equal of where they are right now. So it's not that the 2.1 is going to show that there is a drastic increase or even a 2.1% increase. There's going to be a little bit balancing out on that on the residential components. The only one that we're kind of holding steady is that industrial area where we're holding that one at the same level that it has been in previous years. So the 2.1 will be on top of that. So when we looked at that, we thought that that was kind of a fair balance. It's the industries that are there and the businesses that are still in our town will see some benefits associated with it, but it's the residents that are here that used to work at Canfor that are seeing some of those hits that will see that this year their taxation actual amount will be close to the same. So it's not going to increase. So that was part of the reason for the rationale of why we went in this direction and continue to add to that reserve while we still could. With the way that it's also structured is that our capital program is not reducing because we have access to the RBA. We have the ability to continue with those projects that kind of keep our community moving forward and making sure that we're not falling behind on our infrastructure, because I know that's always a huge concern when there is very minimal increases or when there is a reduction. So we've been able to maintain that by staying at this level in the 2.1%. And the other part of it is that the funding that we've been provided from our RBA is that we need to spend it. We need to show the province that it's beneficial to our community. Otherwise, they may decide that it's not important for us to get the next round of that. So we're really trying to find some ways in order to kind of push as much as we can in that direction. And again, we can put on there projects like the Northside Water at $7.8 million, and it's not touching taxation. It's going to come out of RBA funding. If we get the federal grant funding, we'll utilize that. That money goes back to RBA and we'll redistribute it to another project that would be beneficial in that area. So again, we've got a few things that allow us to kind of have this set up the way that it is. Definitely hear your feedback in regards to this. Yes, thank you.
Just have one question on the RBA. Like, it isn't shown as revenue in this year's budget. Is that?
Because we received 3 years worth
Yeah.
last year in advance. So what you see there is in 2025, we received our first installment. And then in 2026, we received 2024, we received our first installment.
Yeah.
2025, we received 11 some million. So 3 years worth. And the last one will come in 2028.
Okay. But it still is there.
It still
to
is
feed
there.
in, but
That's just showing the change from 2026 to 2025 is 0 because we don't have any coming in 2026 because we already got it. And these are just budget comparisons, not actuals here. So this is budget to budget. So
Yeah.
2025 budget that we set and what we're proposing for the 2026 budget. So it's not showing you the 11 million we received this year because that's in our actual numbers, which I'm finalizing, which will come to you later.
okay. Councilor Frankel.
Normally when we get a binder, which I still hope to get. Margaret, I don't see where the reserve accounts, where they're situated. Normally when we go through each, we've allocated that, and at the very end, it shows where our reserve accounts are. What am I missing that?
That'll be in a next meeting because this was just about the taxation we wanted to talk about. But like I said, to do the taxation, I actually had to set the general fund budget. So I haven't gone through because the reserves use water and sewer use it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all of those funds, I have to bring it all together and then bring the reserves to you at another date. This is just operations and the things that taxation covers is what you're seeing. The reserves are still in great shape. We have very healthy reserves.
Any other questions?
Do we have any questions on the actual differences that I've noted? So as I've gone through the comparisons of the budget, and this is what the binders kind of tell you, is that here's what the budget was in total for the function for 2025, and here's what it's going to be in 2026, and here's where the difference is. So the differences in the end are going to be the $304,580 because that's what we're balancing out when we get down to the bottom. So that's the loss that we're looking to cover. And these are all the differences in the funds. And some of them are very small. The ones that are very big are noted in the notes. Ones like in the recreation and cultural activities other. And the reason for those large ones like the 461 on note 19 is we have our centennial celebration in there and that is covered by a reserve transfer. So really these gains and losses all come down to that 304,508. We only use the reserves for capital purposes, so none of the reserves are going into operations. We don't use it to fund any operations, so the reserve spreadsheet will come to you when we do the full capital projects for every fund, and then you'll get to see where our reserves are at and how we're funding each of those capital projects out of what reserves, such as the RBA and other reserves we have.
Did you have a question?
I do, sorry. Don't mean to, yeah, but whatever, I have questions.
If you push the button, it comes up on my screen and I can see it.
Okay, thanks. No, the reason why I like the previous iterations, I've got a list, right? And I know some of those are capital projects, but I want to make sure that I've got on there firefighters' wages. I want to make sure that we're committed to supporting our volunteer force. So when 10 of them show up, they're all getting paid. So I want to make sure that that's in there. There's those type of things from veterans crosswalks, that those are capital, or are they? Indigenous crosswalks to our ideas of where we want things like a Highway 16 walkway up the hill. When do we get to talk about the things that we've accumulated over the last year of things that we should be thinking about at a budget?
So some of these things are operational. Most of the ones that you mentioned are. If there was a difference or an increase in, say, the firefighters' salaries or the stipends, if you look at the fire department, there is a change in the fire department. And on note 19, it tells you what those changes, I think it's 19.
Note 20.
20. So on that note, it tells you exactly what the changes in that are. So the actual firefighter stipends haven't changed because we adjusted for our increase in their stipends and we've allotted for the amount that is required and the money will be there for them. The budget hasn't changed. Otherwise, if it had changed, it would show up on the difference from the prior budget.
And capital, we talk about this.
Yes.
I don't know, I just.
So the general capital sheet has been provided to you. So those are the only capital projects that are coming out of general. If a pickleball court is to be added to the general capital, there will need to be a decision on how much that will be and where that money will come from.
What was our commitment? Or the perceived commitment, sorry, of pickleball courts, because I think they all think it's coming.
There's
really?
been no indications that there's anything coming for that.
Interesting.
Was the pickleball people think?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. After that meeting where they were all in here, they all think it's happening. Yeah, yeah, that's for the other thing, but
There is no
I don't know
money
when we get into that
donated by
discussion of
Canfor.
a year's worth of conversation of, God, it sounds like I'm venting because I do this every year. But when do we have all of the conversations that maybe the team missed that we're facing? So if it is pickleball courts and you haven't put it in, we're taking the heat that it's supposed to be there. So when do we have the discussion of what's transpired over the last year? That we've promised things or made indications or had presentations from people. Doesn't matter that it's pickleball, that we go back and say, yeah, that's a project I want. I want Highway 16 Park. I want pickleball courts. I want all of those things. And then it gets back to what we're talking about. We're in a tough time. And why aren't we using some of that money then for the industrial reserve to do other things? So I don't know when that happens. And I'd love to see that we're putting in a veterans, I hope it's in the budget that we're putting in a veterans crosswalk because we took heat on that. And I don't know if you need a resolution every time that we hear these things that we want to put forward in a budget. But I don't
think-
know, I'm kind of,
I think you can request that at any budget meeting, including this one. If you would like a veterans sidewalk to go in, then you and council can discuss that. And we will either fit it in under operations or come back to you with an increase in the budget to allow for that. The pickleball courts and things like that will be discussed when we do capital. This is operations only for the purpose of setting taxation. Again, capital isn't affected by the taxation increase.
Mr. Lozay.
Okay, so throughout the year, like Counselor, we have discussed different projects. And so what you're saying, Margaret, as I'm understanding it, is those different projects that have been brought forward by the community for our consideration and which we've indicated that we want to consider, those will be discussed in the capital budget piece?
It
Is that-
depends if they're capital or operations. If
So,
they,
yeah.
yeah, if they're operations and council has already made a resolution that that's what they want to have done, such as a veteran sidewalk, then it would have been added to the operations budget. If there is no resolution or no request of council to put one in, then it hasn't been included, but could still be covered out of operations if council so wishes to do that.
Just gonna put my 2 bits in there. A resolution is always the best way to go because it makes it clear to staff that this is
Yes.
something we want to follow. Because otherwise, not everybody that presents do we want to spend staff time working on, right? So if after a presentation, we feel that this is something we want to follow, let's go with a resolution. And that's not a
Yeah.
criticism, that's not,
No.
I'm just saying, let's make it perfectly clear because then it's clear which way we lean and what we want staff to put their time into.
Okay, so what if resolutions were made and nothing has happened?
So that's where we have our resolution tracker. So we'll be able to go through that list and
Yeah.
pull those pieces out and make sure that they're actioned. And if you are aware of something, by all means, let me know and we can make
Okay.
sure, but I'll be going through that, making sure that all of these pieces are included.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So just a suggestion, resolution wise, there isn't a resolution for a sidewalk. There is a resolution that the CAO investigate options for a sidewalk. That kind of fell in between the last 2 CAOs, but if there's something you want to be forwarded to budget deliberations, the resolution you discuss and make is that blah, 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 be approved and that this be forwarded to the 2026 budget deliberations. And that way that's how I track them in the resolution trackers. So council can only spend money and legislate by resolution. So everything.
Just to use, and the pickleball courts as they came in here, we listened to them and where they were supposed to be, that they thought 2 years ago, then nothing in 2025. And sure, you're right, maybe we didn't make a resolution, but sometimes how, I feel now I've got to go through, and I will go through my blue book from last year and go through every one of our meetings, and I will bring forward stuff that I thought we would be acting on this year. And I feel that we're into February, it's pretty difficult to go back and say we need $2 million for pickleball courts or whatever the number is. And I think it was even when it goes back to 2-3 years ago when we were presented with costs of pickleball courts over at the VTCC. So to me, something, we're missing something that doesn't get the capital. An operational, we haven't had too much of a problem with operational over the years. We're pretty good. Whether Nelson or Ian or anybody brings up a budget, we're pretty good with that. It's this capital portion. And when the pickleball people come in January or February last year, how the hell are we supposed to remember to remind somebody that we need to make a resolution, or most of us just keep on moving forward? There's an indication that something was going to happen. There was no resolution and there's no resolution tracker, then we've lost that ability to react to what was presented to us, I feel. That's just one thing, but that's one that's I get to deal with a lot. Probably you do as well. So I don't know. I don't know how we get to that capital project side and then go, sorry, you didn't have a resolution. That's not, I listen to people. I think we're trying to do things when they present.
So again, just gonna say, I would hate to us to get into a corner where everybody that presents to council is automatically a resolution for what they ask for. No,
don't think that's what I'm saying. None of us.
no. So let's, going forward, make sure if we want to move something forward, we make a resolution and we go that way. Yeah,
So in our procedures bylaw, that's what a notice of motion is for. If you see a presentation at this meeting, you can, and you want to support it, you can do, that's how the procedures bylaw is set up for those kind of things. So you make a notice of motion for the next meeting and it gets discussed at the next, goes on the agenda and gets discussed at the next meeting. And from there, you can either direct staff to come back or whatever you want to do with that. But that's what notice of motions are.
no, and that's not the conversation I've had with Margaret either. So if that's the perception there, then
Just because precedence was set.
So are there any other questions on the differences to budget? Is there any function that you'd like to review the comments on, or does the operations budget look fair the way it is? Keeping in mind that anything that's added would come from a reserve at this point. If you're not going with the 2.1, it would either have to be more than 2.1 or from a reserve. Or council can choose to cut other items from the budget.
where are we, guys?
Okay,
Do you want to move
do
on
you want us to move on to?
projects? I'm not hearing any.
So we have provided a list of capital projects at the back. There's currently 18 on the list. Everything from project number 12 through 18 is a carry forward from this year. There was a bunch of different reasons why these were carried forward. Some of them were just timing and in some cases it was delivering of equipment. So for instance, the septic receiving station and the chlorine generation station, both of those ran into delays because of tariffs and challenges of getting things across the border. So we will be seeing those coming by shortly. And then the other ones are just the projects are coming closer to completion. For instance, the force main and lift station replacement project. So the initial 11 projects that are listed there are all on the newer side that we're proposing to bring forward. They were discussed last year as part of the budget process to give an understanding of where we would be going in the next few years. We haven't provided a lot of details on these because a lot of them are fairly self-explanatory where they're at, but we can provide another document that has a map that shows each one of the locations and the areas that they outline. And how exactly they're going to be moved forward. I guess one to kind of note is that climate adaptation and risk management one. That one is in relation to the Nike Creek project that we had proposed years before. And it's become a requirement from the funding sources that this needs to be done before they could even consider a grant application on that project. What we're looking at is getting approval for those projects in order to be able to start the process of moving them forward and getting council's approval in order to do that. We've also got on the previous page equipment noted that we also needs to start moving forward with. So one of the equipment is a wheeled excavator. So that's the replacement of our existing unit, a loader pickup room, and that is an attachment for our loader, which will allow us to be able to pick up the heavy material in the spring and minimize the amount of material that has to be picked up by the sweeper. So this will make things more efficient. There's the remaining amount that was associated with the loader, and then the replacement of our community bus. So that's going to be under grant funding, but we still need approval in order to be able to move that forward for purchasing. And then the remaining, the additional one is also in regards to the fire department. So maybe I'll let Margaret and Nelson talk to that one.
Maybe before that, also new to the operational budget is leases for 3 vehicles. So there are 3 vehicle leases included in the operations costs of the budget, and they are noted in the notes. So one is for the fire department. So there's an additional vehicle with the addition of a deputy fire chief, fire smart kind of person. So it's covered under the Fire Smart grant, the lease payments. So that one can go forward and covered by grants. And then there are 2 other, one for the district office and one for public works. So we've gone with a leasing option this year instead of an outright purchase, as it's more money.
Yeah.
Purchase vehicle.
Yeah, we decided to go with that because we're paying for the use on it rather than the full value of the vehicle. And then at the end of it, we can make a determination whether it's a value for us to continue and purchase it outright or continue the lease for further. It will also allow us to be able to roll over vehicles so that we can have newer vehicles within our fleet and only pay for the amount that we utilize. And again, it'll put us into the operations budget and not into the capital. So we're not having this outlay when you're starting to look at vehicles being $60,000 to $150,000. It's a huge amount for us to outlay, especially if they're in areas where they don't get a huge amount of mileage, they don't get a huge amount of wear and tear. We can be very conscious about how we utilize that money that way. Yeah, and then going on to the fire truck.
Yes, I'll let Nelson speak to the fire truck.
Thank you. So in 2024, we started the process to replace a 1984 water tender. So that water tender, there was about 5,500 liters, no pump, and it's 1984 International. So that was all sent out for tender and approved. And it was awarded to Hub International. And Hub International, they already bought the chassis and the cab, and they're waiting for the build on that. And it's 30 months. So we're expecting it late fall 2027. So the new tender that we ordered or to be replaced is 6,000 liters. So it's only 400 liters more than the other truck. It had a 2,000 liter fire pump on it and no other special amenities. So it would take a while for that to get here. So the total cost of that build was $580,280 plus any applicable taxes, plus any increases in pricing due to labor, materials, tariffs, and taxes. So that's the agreements that we have now. So they have one in stock. So I've inquired of them to get the pricing on that. It is slightly a little bit more. So the cost of the new truck is $657,767. But there's no increase on pricing on that. Plus, we'd have to pay applicable taxes on that. But what it does give us is that tank actually holds 6,500 liters, so more water. It has a 3,200 liter pump on there, which is rated for structural firefighting now. So it can act as a pumper and it can act as a water tender. It is still single axle, so it meets the requirements that we already have, fits into our bay. The other one that it does is it pumps and rolls, which means it can be used for wildfires. And it comes with a little turret on the front or a bumper attachment with a joystick. So you can actually fight the fires from inside the cab, and we can use it for car fires, dumpster fires, outdoor fires, cardboard fires, stacked piles, and all kinds of different things. So it gives us an all-around availability for this truck. One of the other things is talking to Hub, they'll use our truck and chassis that we already purchased as a down payment. So that means that the actual difference is only about $80,000 to get this new truck, and it's ready in 30 days. So it'll be here almost sometime in April. So the total cost for that would be outstanding would be $531,691, and that's with taxes. And that includes them putting on a winter package and everything for us, so it's all ready for us to go. And we already have reserves of $568,000. So we've already got the money sitting aside. So I'm looking at of that is to see if we can move forward and get this other truck, which would be here right away, and prepare us for any summer or spring activities.
So this also prevents us from getting into the situation where this other truck build is still 2 years out and there could be additional increases in cost. There was already one changeover increase in cost on that truck, and how much was it?
40,000.
40,000. So there could be additional ones, and then we're creeping up on the cost of this truck. So it's better for us to purchase the one that's available. I believe it'll be more cost effective. And it gives us more options as well as far as operationally.
Absolutely. And I'll go for questions, but also tying into this, I haven't had an update on, we were having issues with the tender leaking. Are we still in that situation
We're still
right now?
working on it.
So thank you very much. Yes, we are still, we still have that newer truck, water tender. The tank still has some leaking issues. We're still able to use it in operational. It is with the company that we purchased it from. It's with their parent company now, and they're looking at all different options. So I've taken it in many times and sent them a lot of information and had many visits of many different people to try to come up with a solution for this. And we haven't got any resolution yet.
I mean, to me, that would be another factor in making this an easy decision. Go ahead, Councilor
So
Lozay.
do we just, my question is, do we just make a motion on this or do we just, so we make a motion?
We can do
Is
that.
that what you?
Yeah, the motion.
Well, I'd like to make the motion if it's that we go ahead, just this.
So it's that the purchase of a new water tender from blank company for blank money that'll
Yeah.
be approved and that the funds come from the fire equipment
Any discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Great.
That's a really good solution.
That's
It's good to hear.
We would also like the ability to be able to move forward on the capital projects that are listed here. If we want to have more information or detail, we can bring that back at another meeting. But this would allow us to be able to start the tendering or RFP process in order for these projects to get started. We do have a couple of them that are kind of critical in regards to time, such as the airport turn pads of getting that worked out and tendered as soon as possible. And then I guess there's a couple of them that actually it's only up to number 9. But it would allow us to be able to move these things forward as quickly as possible. So we've included in there the new workspace. So just to provide clarification on that, that is to provide office spaces up in the upstairs section of the Public Works yard. This is because we have Lucky is currently working in the Director of Public Works and Engineering's office right now. And we've got Rashika that's actually working in the hallway. So this would allow us to be able to put the two of them upstairs and provide a meeting space, actually set it up the way that it was kind of intended to, and allow us to be able to provide the heating and cooling system that needs some modifications, the partition walls that are going to be associated with that, the electrical components that would be required for it as well. And all of that would be coming out of the RBA funding. The reason that we're able to use that is because the positions that it's supporting are RBA funded as well.
Any questions there?
Yeah, just clarification. That's upstairs in the new shop, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, because I remember when we did the tour on the grand opening or whatever, there was a
Huge
huge
open area.
area
Yeah.
that was kind of built with that in mind.
That's
That's the same area you're talking about?
Yeah, so there'll be a total of 3 offices, so we'll still have 1 spare up there. It'll have a meeting room that's about the same size as the lunchroom downstairs. We've tried to use the lunchroom on a few occasions, but of course, the guys, that's where all of their stuff
Yeah.
gets left for the day. And so we'll change that into a meeting room upstairs. It'll also have a storage space for our office files, which are currently jammed in here and in a few different locations. So it'll provide us with the opportunity to have those up there and store it away, as well as like they're putting a washroom and a kitchenette up there so that it makes it a little bit more functional as well.
Yeah.
Not having to run up and down the stairs for
Yeah.
all of that.
That answers that. Thanks.
So
Yeah.
for the equipment, the wheeled excavator and the loader pickup broom, I have put in here that this will be covered by a loan. So one of our short-term equipment financing loans, which allows us to borrow over 5 years and pay it back. Right now, we're down to 1 loan. We usually carry about 3, so we have 1 loan right now. This would be our second loan, and it requires a specific type of resolution or the actual financial plan bylaw before we can put the loan, like the borrowing in place so that we could purchase those items. So we can either make a resolution now to trigger the borrowing and start that to purchase these items, or we can wait until the passing of the financial plan bylaw. So I'm looking for preference.
That was for the loader and what else?
It's for the loader and the loader pickup room, the attachments for it. So the loan would be about $630,000 for the 2. And it's a 5-year short-term financing loan, up to 5 years.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. Take that. That make
Is that a motion?
It is. So it'd be the council approve a loan authorization of up to 5 years in the amount of $630,000 for the purchase of the loader and the attachment, the pickup room.
That's the loader we replaced last year. The one-
The pickup room, yes, it'll work on
Yeah,
that
the
one.
loader.
Yep.
Oh, the wheeled excavator. Sorry, we want the wheeled excavator and the loader pickup room.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the loader?
No,
Loader pickup room.
the loader's coming out of the equipment reserve.
Yeah.
So the wheeled excavator and the loader pickup room, sorry.
Yeah.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? It's carried.
And then I guess the final one would just be in the regards to the list on the capital, whether we want to move forward with that now, or we want to wait until a later date. for discussion. That's right, yeah.
I would also like a resolution on the 2.1% if council feels inclined, because then I can start preparing the budget based on that. Otherwise, I'm waiting until a further discussion to decide what the taxation is going to be, which affects the whole bylaw and puts that on hold. And we can discuss it at a later date if council's not ready. But if 2.1 is reasonable, then resolution would be great.
Could we back that up, Margaret? Just because of some of the discussion we've had today, could we approve building the budget around the, well, I guess that's the 2.1%. I'm just trying to think, build the budget around that total number, and then we'll have a little bit more discussion about how we get to that number.
Yes,
Could that
because
work?
anything that's contained within, you can make changes to, within the operations budget. It's just that the taxation will be what it is plus 2.1.
Maybe. You see where I'm coming from? Just so we have that discussion. There's some discussion. Do we take it out of reserve? Do we do it all out of taxation? Can we agree to that final number? And then we'll discuss a little bit of how that we get there. I think people need a little bit of processing time here is what I'm reading the room as. So we agree that we want to get to this budget number. But how we get there, let's leave that to a little bit of discussion, yeah.
So I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion for our budget be 2.1 taxation increase. Is that what you're saying?
I'm
Because what I.
Trying to think of how I word this. It's not easy.
But that doesn't mean the details of the budget. Like you said, how we get there, or that's the number, but
That just assigns us the pot of money. So what
That's
you're
right.
saying is you're okay with the 2.5 times to the utility class? So you're
Yes.
doing the
Yeah.
Yeah.
increase and a 2.1% taxation increase.
yes.
And what you're increasing is
Or
gets to
Yeah,
that.
that's right. That's what I
But
understand.
you're agreeing to a CPI increase basically of 2.1% to keep taxation current.
Yeah.
And the increase of 2.5 on the class 2.
Because we can take that amount that you want to pull out of the reserve from the CAN4 or
If
the
we wanna pull it
industrial.
out.
If you want to pull it out and apply it to somewhere within the operational budget,
Yes,
Yeah.
we could find some ways in order to do that, but
Yeah.
this
So if
bottom
you're,
dollar
you can
number
choose, yeah.
and then percentage would stay the same.
Yeah, so you can choose to take the 138,255 transfer out, and then you would have
yeah,
138,255 extra dollars to apply to a
Something
capital
else.
project such as ones mentioned or something else.
You read that back, lady? I just want to have something fairly plain language that I think we all know what
we're asking.
so the budget is built around this number,
That's right.
and then we'll have a little bit more discussion about how we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't want to delay Margaret.
And we'll come to you. Sorry, I got Brian first, and then I'll come to you.
I,
Not sure
I,
who hit it first.
I'm just, yeah, I'm okay with 2.1. The problem I have probably is that we just spent 60 minutes to get to a $16 million revenue and a $9 million expense. I feel we've gone to where the school board and we're given a budget and they're told to approve it. I agree with what you're saying. I don't think we've had enough time to process. We go over last couple of years, we spend nights going over this, maybe 2 hours over a
Yeah.
couple of consecutive nights, 60 minutes on a, whatever you want to call the budget. It is not enough time for me, but if it's good for everyone else, I'm good with that. I just, yeah.
So
That's where I
if
am.
I can just come in before we go to you, Ernest, and then we'll hit there. Just want to say at the regional district, we do this. So it's not, we're not casting a cast in stone number now, but we're actually giving approval. Yeah, this is kind of where we see where we're going. So you can build the budget around that. Otherwise, you're playing a little bit blind. You know what I mean? From the CFO perspective. So I think there's value in us giving that. Yeah, we agree with that's where we're aiming for. And then we'll work out the details later on, right? Because, yeah, anyways, I'll go to you, Councilor Martins.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to delay the process either by not agreeing with the agreed at 2.1, but what if we decide to take some out of that retention fund or that reserve fund and instead of 2.1, it's 1.99? You know, like
Or use that.
to, you know, it doesn't have, well, what if it comes in at a little bit less than 2.1?
But I think we've allowed ourselves that
We've
flexibility.
allowed that flexibility, that
They up to two.
up to 2.1,
Yeah.
up to 2.1, I'm totally good with.
So what you're agreeing to is, mine's on right, is the 5.970598
Yeah.
as a taxation level to cover the operations budget. How you get there, it could be 1% increase with some transfers from reserve or however that's going to be. But this number here, the 5,975,98, is what I require to balance the budget I've presented to you.
Good.
You comfortable, Brian?
I'm one of the.
Until we're worried about everybody, Brian, but I think we're,
No, I just about walked out of here.
okay,
You know, I am. Not happy.
So you're not comfortable?
I'm not happy with the process. And I'm sorry that I swore, but I don't like the process that. If that's where we are, fine, but if I don't mind the 2.1. Not agree. Just feel we haven't had any input to it at all. We're not going to get that. Where does your stuff fit in? Usually we get some input. So that's where I am. Operationally, I'll say no. I'm sensing, 25 years, it's like, can we get the budget done in December? We're still not there. We are in February, because May 5th or 6th or whatever's coming up. Gotta push through. That's how I feel. We're pushing through a budget.
So for clarification, this was only for preliminary discussions. There's nothing really to approve here. It's just that here we are showing you how we can make it through this loss that we've had, what we can do with the budget to get us to a good scenario where we're not using the full reserve or we're not increasing taxes by 11%. But there is still room to change any of this. There's no decision today. All it's telling me is that you generally agree with the direction and that this is the type of scenario you would like to see without those large increases, because we can always go with a 6% tax increase and that's how we can balance it out. You do have the opportunity to go through all of the notes that I've made, and if there are things eliminated from the budget that you feel should be added back in, we can do that. And then if the expenses are more, we can take money from the reserve to allow for that. And I also can provide the more detailed department budgets, should you want them. And you can request any of the detail you like, and I will provide it to council so that they can see what they need to make that decision.
Yeah, we can create the binders. We can create the details that go along with this. Like I said, this was just an attempt to provide some clarity on some of those because when you get the large spreadsheets, it can get bogged down in some of the details. But we can definitely provide the binder as well.
And I had planned to provide them at a later date. This was more of a preliminary budget presentation, so you can see where we were going. I just wanted to make sure that we were headed in the right direction with what we were doing or what we were thinking with the budget.
Councilor Lozay.
Yeah, so Margaret, then prior to our next budget meeting, so we've got now a number that we're gearing towards a levy. So if there are things that were presented through the year, capital projects that we would like to bring forward, then that would be the time to bring them forward at our
Yes.
next budget meetings. Okay,
Correct.
sounds good.
And council can bring forward anything at
Yeah.
any time.
Okay, thanks, Margaret.
So I think the last item we had was the grant and aid list, and you have the grant and aids on your agenda again. So if there are any on there that council would like to discuss, the budget includes all of the grant and aids as they were presented to us. And I've built the budget with them on there. So we have had some discussions about some of them. Some of them do not require money. Some of them are grant or in-kind requests, such as the figure skating club, the speed skating. So these ones are estimates of what our labor would actually be and for items they've requested. So their values are in the very far right-hand column. The ones you see that are $2,500 besides the chamber are monetary. So they are requests for cash.
Any questions on there?
Just one.
Go ahead.
On the, on that bucking around BC thing, that's just a private business, right? Like, have they showed any profit loss type stuff? Are they just breaking even or?
They
I know
are
they're looking
brand,
for the money,
they
I
are
know that,
brand
so.
new from what I understand. They've done a rodeo a couple of times now, I believe, but it was under the Mullaville rodeo before. So this is a new request. The information for them is in the package and you can see what they're asking for and who they are in the grant and aid actual application request.
I share those concerns.
Yeah, like they're in it for profit, for sure. And they could make it look like it's losing money because it's all $100 bills, like it's, nobody's there counting heads, so to speak, but I'm not implying that, I'm a little bit concerned with that one.
It's the one I feel the least easy about because they do definitely have a cattle company that provides all the rodeo stock, right? So,
It's all in-house stuff, and
yeah,
if they have a $3,000 profit, guess what? That's what it costs for the bulls, $3,000. Brings it to zero, you know. That's just a concern, like I say, I'm not implying that, I'm just,
yeah.
Do we want it left on there? Do we want it removed?
I remember one time, I think was before they changed their name, when it was Mulva Hill cattle company or whatever it was prior to the Bucking Around BC thing, they asked for some in kind, like the use of the bleachers or that kind of stuff. I think making a fence, maybe cutting the arena size in half or something with more close seating, just better VIP seating or something. And I remember the council agreed to that because it wasn't monetary. And now they're asking monetary with a different name, so.
The rodeo group got money, didn't they?
No, they did not.
No, they didn't? Okay.
So they haven't requested any grant and aid. The Rodeo Association did not make a request.
No, but in the past they've
In
received
the-
cash.
Yes, they have, to fund their
That's-
event.
I had the same concerns with that one.
Yeah.
I think I voiced them too.
Yeah, they were in last year.
I think maybe they need to, well, no.
Or at least ask a few more questions.
Yeah, ask a few more questions or show some kind of,
So they have been registered as a not-for-profit society. Um,
all in-house, so.
Yeah.
And the Rodeo Association will not be doing a rodeo this year, so they are the replacement, is what the application says. So as the Rodeo Association's not doing a rodeo, they will be doing an event which will be held New Year's Eve with a dance to follow. And this is the 4th time they've done this event.
Yes. Was it the rodeo association doing that event before, or was that a private event? The
I think the rodeo association was doing.
Bulls Before
an event.
Midnight? I thought that was private. Yeah.
They say in their application here, that this will be their fault doing it, so I like they're doing it.
Good. I would love to see a resolution that said we're leaving it off for now, asking for more information and it can come back to a future meeting. Somebody like to make that?
I'll make that motion.
All in favor? Carried. Anything else that anybody isn't comfortable on that grant and aid list, or are we? Otherwise, we should maybe have a motion to approve the rest. Is that where we're at?
Prove it without bucking around.
Yes,
Yeah.
'cause some of these are actually,
Is it happening this weekend?
one is this weekend for the Nordics, the Nachaco Nordics. So some of these are coming up shortly, so it'd be nice to have a resolution of what's approved so that they can get their funding before.
All in favor? Carried.
No resolution.
No. So I will bring back the additional information if they provide it in time to the next budget meeting on this event for council to decide.
And it looks like we're having difficulties getting that next budget meeting scheduled.
Why?
Well, because people are away at different times.
Y'all be like me and not go anywhere.
I think I'm, check my dates exactly.
I haven't got mine to Willeen, but if everybody can get those to Willeen and we'll go from there, it's the easiest to get everybody on a chart, a spreadsheet or something. And
You have all mine.
That Kevin, that Will and I. Check now. It's handy to know anything.
Or just days that I'm absolutely,
Not single days,
not single days like.
if you want to. Maybe this time of year it would be.
I think there's a few of us that have either worked for the school district or have spouses there that, you know, spring break or maybe even have grandkids that
Yeah.
need taken care of.
Yeah.
Spring break is something to avoid, right? In my mind.
And I am away for the next 2 weeks, so I'm back on March 2nd. So I'll need some time to prepare before we do another meeting.
Okay, we're adjourned.